Good morning and a warm welcome. Sage for 𝐾𝐿 TV reporting to you live from Sydney, and you're watching Global Markets Roundup. Let's dive into some key highlights and happenings from yesterday, starting with the US market. And Wall Street sank and the European stocks suffered their worst one-day rout in 3 weeks on Wednesday on uncertainty over the pace of the economic recovery, as investors move away from riskier assets lifted the dollar to one-week highs. And MSCI's World Equity Index fell 0.41% after 7 consecutive days of gains. Wall Street ended lower on Wednesday, spooked by worries that the Delta coronavirus variant could blunt the economy's recovery and on uncertainty about when the Federal Reserve may pull back its accommodative policies. The S&P 500 was down 0.13%, while the Dow Jones fell 0.20%. The Nasdaq Composite shed 0.57% and the small cap Russell 2000 was down 1.14%. Investors also took cues from the St. Louis Fed President James Bullard's comments that the central bank would consider removing stimulus support despite a slowdown in the labour market's recovery. However, job openings were at an all-time high in July, rising to 10.9 million according to the Labor Department. Real estate and consumer discretionary stocks were the top movers on the S&P 500. Technology and materials stocks trailed, however. And 8 of the 11 segments of the index stayed in the negative territory. In the corporate news, PayPal announced it will acquire the Japanese fintech company Paidy to ramp up its payment services, and the deal is expected to be completed by the year's end. However, the PYPL stock dropped 2.56% in the intraday trading following the news. And shares of biotechnology firm Kadmon Holdings surged 72.36% after the Paris-based Sanofi agreed to acquire the company for $1.9 billion. Coinbase Global fell 2.48% after the cryptocurrency exchange said the Securities and Exchange Commission has threatened to sue the company over its crypto lending program. And moving to the futures and commodities market. Gold futures were down 0.40% to $1,791.30 per ounce, and silver decreased by 1.54%, while copper fell 1.13%. The Brent oil futures increased by 1.39%, and WTI crude was up 1.51% to $69.38. Looking at the bond market, the 30-year Treasury bond yields were down 1.58%, while the 10-year bond yields fell 2.56%. And the US dollar futures index increased by 0.21% to US $92.707. And now it's time for a small break, but stay tuned. I'll be back with the Asian and Australian market updates. Property by 𝐾𝐿. Looking for a dream home? Well, that may sound easy, but it isn't. And from looking for a property that is the right fit for you in terms of cost and other factors, to zeroing down on the right mortgage plan, there are various aspects to consider. And for the latest slowdown in the property market, tune in on 𝐾𝐿 TV with me, Sage. I will give the latest updates on the property market as well as real estate stocks to help you make the right decision. Keep watching Property with 𝐾𝐿. Welcome back. This is Sage. You're watching the Global Markets Roundup show. And the European stocks marked their biggest decline in 3 weeks on Wednesday, a day before the European Central Bank meeting that will see policymakers debate a cut in its pandemic-era stimulus program. And the Europe-focused Stoxx 600 index fell 1.1%, with automobile stocks leading the losses with a 2.2% drop. The London markets traded in the red zone as investors anticipated fresh growth catalysts. Dunelm Group shares surged by about 13.61% after the company reported robust growth in the top-line revenue and bottom-line profitability during the financial year 21. And moreover, the company had declared a special dividend considering the solid cash position at the end of financial year 21. And the FTSE 100 listed Smiths Group shares grew by around 2.64% after the company had agreed upon the sale of its medical division to ICU Medical in a lucrative deal. And B&M European Value Retail SA had anticipated its first half of the financial year adjusted EBITDA to remain more than the analysts' consensus estimate, benefited by the encouraging business of general merchandise and seasonal categories. And furthermore, the shares rose by around 7.22%. Moving to the Asian markets now, and Japan's Nikkei share average ended at a near 6-month high on Wednesday as investors scooped up the cheap stocks in hopes of an economic rebound, while SoftBank Group 9984.T jumped after its share swap deal with the Deutsche Telekom. And the Nikkei share average rose to 30,181.21, its highest since March 18th, while the broader topics advanced to 2,079.61. And China's blue chip stocks fell on Wednesday as central bank officials vowed to maintain a prudent monetary policy, while the state media said the country's long-term economic policy remains unchanged. And the blue chip CSI 300 index fell 0.4%, while the Shanghai Composite Index was flat at 3,675.19 points. South Korean shares closed on Wednesday to their lowest in more than a week as regulatory risks dragged the technology heavyweights, Naver and Kakao, while a sharp rise in the local COVID-19 cases dented the sentiment as well. And the Kospi ended down 24.43 points to its lowest since August 30th. And the US and the European equities witnessed their worst one-day rout in 3 weeks on Wednesday on uncertain economic recovery. The domestic benchmark index ASX 200 fell 0.25%. And Monadelphous, Nine Entertainment and South 32 are a few companies going ex-dividend on Thursday. And the crude oil price has rebounded after the US producers in the Gulf of Mexico made a slow progress in restoring output after the Hurricane Ida. The Brent ended at $72.60 a barrel, and US WTI crude settled 1.4% higher at $69.30 a barrel. Gold prices fell to a 2-week low on deepening concerns about the global economic growth, and spot gold was down to $1,792.27 per ounce. And the Dalian's January iron ore edged up 0.1%. The 3-month aluminium on the London Metal Exchange climbed 1.5% to US $2,799.50 a tonne. And the LME copper fell 1% to US $9,260 a tonne. And that is all for now, but do keep watching 𝐾𝐿KINE TV for more market updates. Sage signing off.